The following podcast reflects our personal opinions and interpretations of publicly available information and should not be construed as factual assertions or legal advice. While we aim to provide accurate commentary, this discussion is speculative in nature and intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. We have taken care to conduct thorough research and carefully investigate the information discussed to ensure accuracy where possible. But we acknowledge that we may not have access to all the facts. As freelance producers, our views are entirely our own and do not represent or reflect the positions of any individuals or entities mentioned in this discussion. Any references to individuals, organizations, or events are made in good faith based on public available sources. We expressly disclaim any intent to harm reputations or imply unlawful conduct by any party. And with that said, let's get into it. Hey y'all, Lauren here, TV producer by day, reality junkie by night, and your guide to the galaxy of shows you love to hate, hate to love, and live to bitch about. This is Reality Bites, the podcast where we deep dive into the week's buzziest reality TV and pop culture happenings.
I'm Morgan. By night, I'm Lauren's co-host and other better half. And by day, I moonlight as an executive producer. I've been around the Bravo block enough to know, let's just say, where the bodies are buried.
We'll take you through the biggest and best water cooler moments of the week through a producer's lens you won't find anywhere else.
Buckle up, buttercups.
I've had enough of you, you beast.
Beast? How dare you?
This is Reality Bites. On today's episode, we're pulling back the curtain on the It Ends With Us adaptation and the high-stakes power dynamics shaping Hollywood. Justin Baldoni's heartfelt vision, Blake Lively's creative takeover, and the industry maneuvering behind the scenes. This isn't just a film. It's a front-row seat to Hollywood's sharpest creative and strategic clashes. Colleen Hoover's It Ends With Us wasn't just a bestseller. It was a cultural phenomenon. When Hollywood came calling, it was Justin Baldoni who stood out. His enthusiasm for material was evident, and Hoover entrusted her deeply personal story to him and his newly formed company, Wayfarer Studios. The timing couldn't have been more fortuitous. In 2019, as Wayfarer Studios was beginning to take shape, It Ends With Us landed on Justin Baldoni's radar. At the time, Baldoni was in the early stages of developing his own book, Man Enough, which challenges traditional masculinity norms by advocating for vulnerability and emotional honesty. He was also actively searching for commercial intellectual property that aligned with Wayfarer's mission to tell meaningful, socially impactful stories. On the recommendation of his book agent, Baldoni was introduced to Colleen Hoover's work. Around the same time, Baldoni launched the Man Enough podcast with his co-host and author, Liz Prank, whose book, For the Love of Men, explores the damaging false beliefs surrounding masculinity. Plank's work, which offers a vision for equality and addresses the societal epidemic of violence and loneliness, complemented Baldoni's evolving vision for both Wayfarer Studios and his creative pursuits. Initially, It Ends With Us seemed like an unlikely fit for Baldoni. However, as he immersed himself in the story, its emotional depth and universal themes captured his imagination. Marketed by its publisher, Atria Books, as a romance novel of resilience and healing, the story's exploration of complex human relationships resonated deeply with Wayfarer's mission. Hoover, impressed by Baldoni's passion and thoughtful understanding of her work, championed him and his team as the ideal partners to bring her beloved story to life on screen. For Baldoni, this wasn't any adaptation. It was an opportunity to honor a narrative that had touched millions, especially as it gained massive popularity during the pandemic. Though his initial plan was solely to direct the film, Hoover heavily encouraged him to take on the role of Ryle, a challenge he wrestled with but ultimately embraced after Hoover expressed her faith in his ability to do justice to the character. In January of 2024, after the SAG-AFTRA strike ended and production wrapped principal photography, Justin Baldoni and Wayfarer Studios publicist Jennifer Abel, a partner at Jones Works PR, led by the formidable Stephanie Jones, were already anticipating the fallout from growing tensions between Baldoni and Lively. Evidence later referenced in Stephanie Jones's civil complaint includes a telling text from Abel to a colleague on January 14th, in which she warned, quote, "You and I both know that Blake will be resistant to promote this movie, and the press will be reluctant to do anything with Justin without Blake being a part of it." The single message, written just days after production resumed, hints at a preemptive strategy from Baldoni's camp to brace for a potentially contentious promotional campaign, an assessment that proved eerily foreboding. By February of 2024, the film entered its post-production phase, and the creative tensions that had quietly simmered during filming began to surface. Justin Baldoni favored a darker, more grounded tone, focusing on the raw, emotional foundation of the story. In a recent podcast episode of How to Fail with Elizabeth Day, Baldoni shed light on his cautious approach to the film's sensitive subject matter, reflecting on his intentions. He shared, quote, "I just didn't want to re-traumatize the majority of my audience, which is why I was advocating for a trigger warning at the front and things like that. But those are certain battles that you can't always win." Blake Lively, however, envisioned the project differently. As both the film's lead and executive producer, she championed a broader, more mainstream interpretation designed to resonate with wider audiences. According to Deadline, Lively was heralded as both a, quote, producer and motion picture making guru, and praised as a, quote, creative tour de force in making sure that the movie didn't wind up like a Hallmark movie simply boiling down to its domestic abuse theme. As the trailer progressed through its development, Blake Lively reportedly wasn't impressed with the initial cut and pushed Sony to allow her to create her own version. This effort ultimately granted her independent creative control alongside Baldoni. Lively's involvement extended beyond acting, as she took on multiple roles and immersed herself in various aspects of the film's production, a move that was both ambitious and unprecedented. The release of Lively's trailer in May of 2024 signaled a pivotal moment. Featuring Taylor Swift's My Tears Ricochet, which Lively personally secured, the trailer presented a sweeping romantic drama, shedding much of the grit Baldoni had envisioned. Despite the studio's decision to release Lively's reimagined version of the trailer, Baldoni continued to support the project in interviews, promoting the movie without hinting at any behind-the-scenes tensions. He and Colleen even did press together, including an exclusive on-camera interview with Entertainment Tonight on May 16th to discuss the trailer. In that interview, Baldoni and Hoover appeared arm in arm, signaling that their professional relationship seemed intact at the time. Clearly, any distancing on her part hadn't happened yet. So, when did things change? During the interview, Baldoni was asked how Taylor Swift's song ended up in the trailer. His response, quote, "That's all Blake," Baldoni told ET. Quote, "I have no idea how she did it, but Blake knows everybody. Her and Taylor are very good friends. I'm so happy that they agreed to have a song in the trailer. It's so perfect for the movie." Why would Sony give away creative control from the director and production studio head? It's almost unheard of. Let's dive into what happened behind the scenes of It Ends With Us. Now, in Hollywood, creative control is a complex beast, especially when multiple big names are involved. Traditionally, the director has significant control over the creative aspects, including editing. Thanks to the Directors Guild of America, or the DGA, directors are guaranteed the right to create their own version of the film, called the director's cut. But, and this is a big but, final cut authority doesn't always belong to the director. It's usually reserved for top-tier directors, and in most cases, the studio or producers hold the ultimate power to decide which version goes to market. In this case, Lively, who was both the film's lead actress and one of its producers, took a highly active role in shaping the film. Reports suggest that she brought in an editor, Shane Reed, someone she had previously worked with on Taylor Swift's music video, and who's also known for high-profile work on Deadpool and Wolverine. Why did she do this? It seems she had a specific vision for the film she felt wasn't fully realized in the director's cut by Justin Baldoni, who also helmed the project. Sony, as the studio, was then faced with a choice between Baldoni's cut, which reportedly tested well, and Lively's version, which she believed better aligned with the film's commercial goals and audience appeal. Ultimately, Sony decided to go with the version influenced by Lively's edits. Now, this might sound shocking. Why override the director's creative vision, especially when test audiences liked it? Well, remember, studios make decisions based on marketability and who they believe has the best understanding of the target audience. Lively, as both the star and producer, likely wielded significant influence over the project. But it does make you wonder, could Ryan Reynolds have played a role in this as well? We'll dive into that in just a moment. Here's where it gets tricky. If Baldoni is a member of the DGA, their regulations ensure his right to create his director's cut, but they don't guarantee it's the version that gets released. Producers like Lively can still push their version as long as it aligns with studio interests and contractual agreements. This kind of behind-the-scenes tension isn't uncommon, but it can cause friction, especially in relationships between directors, producers, and studios. So what does this tell us? First, the power dynamics in film production are rarely black and white. Second, creative differences, like the ones we're seeing here, are part of the process. And third, when a big name like Blake Lively steps into a dual role as both star and producer, their voice can carry a lot of weight, sometimes even tipping the scales against a director's vision. Could there be any tie to Reynolds' upcoming Clue franchise with Sony under his Maximum Effort production company? Reynolds is a seasoned writer and director. Blake isn't, given she's only directed one music video for her best friend, Taylor Swift. It's an odd and risky choice for the major studio. Lively's creative influence extended well beyond the editing room, from rewrites to marketing to a curated Spotify playlist. Lively orchestrated every detail of the project's public image. Baldoni, by contrast, was effectively sidelined, his years of effort reduced to a footnote in what had once been known in the industry as the director's cut, had become the, quote, Blake edit. In an interview with Hits Radio UK, Lively shared another intriguing detail about the film. Quote, "I'm not supposed to be talking about this. They begged me to take that song out of the movie, Lana Del Rey's Cherry. They felt like it was too charged and heavy because things are still good with Ryle at that point. So you don't want to feel that change." Despite pushback from most of the team, Lively stood her ground and insisted the song remain in the film. And the friction spilled into personal spheres by May of 2024, when Baldoni discovered that Lively's husband, Reynolds, had blocked him on Instagram. A move that raised eyebrows, especially for Baldoni himself, who was being increasingly iced out of his own project. On Saturday, June 15th, 2024, Lively made a surprise appearance at a special screening of an unfinished version of It Ends With Us at Book Bonanza in Grapevine, Texas. Joining her were her author Colleen Hoover and cast members Brendan Sklenar and Isabella Ferrer. The screening featured Lively's personal edit of the film, a version that generated significant excitement and social media buzz among the book's devoted fans. However, one absence was glaring. Director and co-star Justin Baldoni was noticeably missing from this key press event. What makes this even more intriguing are rumors of competing edits. Reportedly, when Lively's and Baldoni's versions were shown to test audiences, Baldoni's edit scored higher. Yet, despite the feedback, Sony ultimately chose Lively's cut to distribute. How did she manage to secure this victory? Could her husband, Ryan Reynolds, have played a role? There are whispers that Reynolds essentially took over the movie, allegedly forming a strong alliance with Colleen Hoover to champion Lively's version. This raises questions about Hoover's apparent shift in loyalty. In May, during the trailer's release, Hoover appeared to fully support Baldoni, promoting the film alongside him. By the time of the film's debut, her public stance seemed to have changed. At the 2023 Book Bonanza, Hoover reflected on Lively's casting in an interview with Today, saying, quote, "Still to this day, I have not allowed myself to get truly excited because I'm like, something could happen. It's not done filming yet. Like anything could go wrong, but I'm absolutely stoked." Hoover's comment, made just a week after the SAG-AFTRA strike began, strikes an odd chord. Was she referencing the strike's potential impact, or was there something more going on behind the scenes? Whatever the catalyst, Sony's decision to back Lively's cut solidified her creative influence on the project. While Baldoni played a significant role behind the scenes, the battle for creative control left a lasting mark, not just on the film, but on the relationships among its key players. While the creative struggle for control waged behind the scenes with Sony, Lively, and Baldoni, another battle was brewing in the shadows, with the PR machines behind the players involved. On July 10th, 2024, Justin Baldoni and Wayfarer Studios publicist Jennifer Abel informed her boss Stephanie Jones of JonesWorks PR of her resignation and plans to start her own firm, which would later become RWA Communications. Jones, a veteran publicist often described as both polarizing and ruthlessly effective, had built her career representing Hollywood's power elite, including Tom Brady, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Scooter Braun, Hybe America, and Jeff Bezos. However, her reputation is clouded by allegations of vindictiveness and manipulation. Adding another layer of intrigue, Jones is married to Jason Hodes, a senior partner at William Morris Endeavor, the powerhouse agency that represents Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and his Maximum Effort Productions and Marketing, including brands like Aviation Gin, notably introduced to Reynolds by WME and Endeavor's Talent Venture Group, was sold for Diageo plc in a $610 million deal. WME also represents Baldoni, Wayfarer Studios, and nearly every other key player involved in It Ends With Us. Abel and Jones agreed to a transition period where Abel would stay on through the press tour of It Ends With Us until August 23rd, 2024. As July 2024 progressed and the film's press tour approached, rumblings of negative press allegedly planted by Lively's team began to circulate. In response, Jennifer Abel discreetly introduced Baldoni and Jamie from Wayfarer Studios to Melissa Nathan, head of the newly formed The Agency Group, or TAG, for potential crisis management support. Behind the scenes, Nathan's TAG team prepared an, quote, if-then strategy document delivered on July 30th, 2024, which outlined contingency plans to counter negative narratives from Lively's camp. While a strategic outline such as this is standard for PR crisis management, the team maintains it was ultimately proven unnecessary, as public opinion began to organically shift against Lively. Resurfaced interviews and accusations of being difficult started to overshadow her claims, shaping a growing perception of Lively as a challenging figure to work with. Still in its infancy, TAG notably launched in June of 2024. By August 1st, however, the agency gained an influential and somewhat controversial backer, Scooter Braun. Braun, best known for acquiring Taylor Swift's masters and now serving as CEO of Hybe America, quietly acquired a 51% stake in TAG for a reported $25 million. This acquisition marked a significant shift as Braun defected as a client from Stephanie Jones of Jones Works PR to align with Melissa Nathan at Tag. As an aside, with Scooter Braun entering the picture, albeit from the shadows. As an aside, with Scooter Braun entering the picture, albeit from the shadows. It's intriguing that one of Hollywood's most infamous feuds of the last decade found its players on opposite sides of a Mexican standoff. Braun, who owns a majority stake in the PR firm representing Baldoni and Wayfair, stands in sharp contrast to Taylor Swift, Lively's best friend, who lent her song My Tears Ricochet to the trailer and film. Swifties will eagerly point out that the song is widely believed to reflect her fight for the masters Scooter Braun famously bought back. As a Taylor fan myself, I can't help but find it fascinating that Taylor and Lively chose this song to anchor their movie. Of all the options, they went with one from an album where Taylor proudly owns her masters, a quiet but unmistakable flex, and a track that's heavily speculated to be about her fight to reclaim those masters from Scooter. And when you think about how this feud seems to be subversively playing out in the mechanisms of this production, well, it's enough to make you raise your eyebrow. Could this be another layered Easter egg? Or am I just letting my Swiftie brain spiral? Either way, it's deliciously on brand. The summer of 2024 unfolded as a crescendo of calculated moves, public revelations, and behind-the-scenes power plays, laying bare the fractures within Hollywood's tightly controlled PR machinery. As the film's premiere approached, the marketing strategy for the film came into sharp focus with the release of press store talking points. As Lively got more involved in the strategic marketing of the film, from floral pop-ups to music choices to elements of the marketing plan itself, the studio shifted the campaign away from the heavy themes of domestic violence central to Colleen Hoover's novel, instead aligning with Lively's final cut by spotlighting uplifting themes of resilience and strength. This rebranding was accompanied by floral pop-ups and events centered around Lively's character, designed to craft a lighter, more accessible narrative and appeal to a broader audience. Meanwhile, the divide between Baldoni and the rest of the production team continued to grow. Lively and her co-stars reportedly distanced themselves, unfollowing him on social media and leaving him to shoulder most of his press commitments alone. This further isolated Baldoni from his film's broader promotional efforts. Notably, the entire cast, except for actress Isabella Ferrer, is represented by WME, the same agency that also represents Lively, Reynolds, Baldoni, and Wayfair Studios. With the highly anticipated release of Reynolds' Deadpool and Wolverine on July 26th, the agency's priorities and dynamics may have added another layer of complexity to the situation. While Lively and the cast adhered to the uplifting messages during press events, Baldoni eventually broke away, emphasizing the novel's raw, unvarnished emotional core and his original creative vision. This divergence created a noticeable dissonance in the public's narrative, further underscoring his estrangement from the passion project he had once championed. Adding to the tension, media speculation intensified, fueled by, quote, anonymous tips that painted Baldoni in a negative light, accusing him of being dismissive, chauvinistic, and even, quote, borderline abusive on set. Typically speaking, these types of source leaks come from publicists under anonymity. So if this source was leaking these stories from Lively's side, it has to be noted that per the retaliatory clause in the provisions, Baldoni would not be allowed to speak out on his own behalf, even if he was being taunted in the press. It's important to note that if Lively shared the alleged misconduct with her friends or even co-stars and presented her comments as personal experiences rather than formal accusations, for Justin Baldoni, this poses a significant challenge. The no retaliation clause he agreed to prevents him from responding, leaving him unable to address statements that could potentially harm his reputation. This dynamic raises ethical concerns about the impact of sharing subjective accounts without a formal process to substantiate claims, as such narratives can unfairly damage reputations and erode trust in professional environments. Then there was Lively's promotional efforts during the press tour, which prominently showcased her personal brands, including her hair care line, Blake Brown, and her non-alcoholic mixer company, Betty Buzz, alongside Betty Booze, developed under Reynolds' maximum effort. The decision to spotlight a liquor-adjacent brand alongside a film addressing themes of domestic violence drew some skepticism, with observers questioning whether the messaging aligned. Reynolds' maximum effort was reportedly involved in the launch of Betty Buzz, raising interest in the interplay between personal branding and the broader promotional efforts surrounding the film. In an interview at the New York premiere, Lively revealed that Reynolds had rewritten the pivotal rooftop scene between her and Justin Baldoni's characters. This admission sparked speculation that Reynolds may have penned the rewrite during the WGA strike, a potential violation often referred to as scabbing. Christy Hall, the screenwriter for It Ends With Us, clarified that she turned in her script before the writer's strike began on May 2nd, 2023, and later returned September 27th, 2023, to the project to provide feedback during the editing process. Hall initially believed that certain lines from the rooftop scene, among others, had been improvised on set until she saw Lively's interview. Reflecting on the rooftop scene, Hall explained to People magazine, "That scene was probably the trickiest one to tackle because it's perfect in the novel. My first attempt at that scene, I really tried to honor what Colleen Hoover wrote, almost word for word. I really, really tried because I think that she just did it best. What's tricky about that scene is it's long. I am very proud of my work, and I do feel like the beats that needed to be honored in that scene are preserved, and they are. Again, Colleen did her best. She did it first, and it's from her. I do think that scene is a really beautiful reflection of what she penned from the beginning." Complicating matters further, Baldoni himself was unaware that Reynolds had rewritten the scene. Like Hall, he had assumed the changes were improvised during filming, until Lively's revelation on the red carpet at the premiere. On August 6th, the same day as the New York premiere, Reynolds shared a video with his nearly 54 million Instagram followers, featuring a mock press junket interview with Brandon Sklenar, Lively's co-star and on-screen love interest in It Ends With Us. Reynolds was joined by his mother and co-star Hugh Jackman, as they took turns in jest, interviewing Sklenar. The segment, lighthearted and comedic on the surface, began with Reynolds cheekily holding up a photo of Sklenar and making a playful comment about his backside. While the video was framed as a humorous interaction, its timing and content suggest a calculated move. By associating Lively's upcoming film with the highly anticipated Deadpool and Wolverine, Reynolds subtly tied It Ends With Us to one of the summer's most anticipated blockbusters. This approach not only elevated Lively's film, but subtly shifted focus away from Baldoni, Lively's co-star and director. The video, much like the Book Bonanza event, highlights how Reynolds and Lively are skillfully intertwining their marketing narratives. While this strategy is not inherently unusual, cross-promotion is common within the entertainment industry. It does invite closer scrutiny. Notably, It Ends With Us is distributed by Sony, whereas Deadpool and Wolverine are properties of Fox, now under Disney. This raises an important question. To what extent did Reynolds and Lively leverage their influence to align these projects in the public eye, despite the differing studio affiliations? Again, could there be a tie to Reynolds' upcoming Clue franchise, developed under his Maximum Effort production company and distributed by Sony? If so, this connection could explain the strategic alignment of these seemingly unrelated projects, with both Sony and Maximum Effort standing to benefit from the amplified visibility created by its cross-promotional approach. By centering Sklenar as Lively's on-screen love interest in these promotional efforts, And continuing to omit Baldoni entirely, the couple not only redirected the film's focus, but also redefined its promotional strategy to align with their own narrative and marketing dominance. Now, circling back to the film's New York premiere on August 6th, tensions with the production were increasingly apparent. Again, as with the press junkets, Baldoni was noticeably absent from key red carpet photos featuring the cast and author Colleen Hoover. His absence stood in stark contrast to Lively's commanding presence. Flanked by her husband Reynolds and close friend Hugh Jackman, Lively took center stage alongside their Deadpool and Wolverine co-stars. Exuding undeniable star power, the optics were clear. A tightly bonded group of A-listers dominated the spotlight, while Baldoni, the film's director and once central figure, appeared to be drifting further into the background. Adding another layer to this dynamic is the involvement of Liz Plank, a mutual friend of Baldoni, Lively, and Reynolds. Plank, a writer and longtime co-host of Baldoni's Man Enough podcast since 2020, attended the New York premiere but only shared photos of Lively. Interestingly, Plank's connection to Lively and Reynolds can be traced back to August 2019, when Plank reposted one of Reynolds' social media posts promoting her book, For the Love of Men. This early interaction suggests deeper ties between the trio that predate the production of It Ends With Us. This raises an intriguing question. What changed between the premiere in August of 2024 and December of that year, when Plank abruptly left the podcast? Their last episode aired on October 28th, but just 2 months later, on December 19th, Plank posted a cryptic statement on Instagram about the political climate saying, quote, "The new regime's war on press is an intimidation tactic, plain and simple, designed to silence anyone who refuses to bow to power." While the context of this statement is unrelated to the film, its timing and Plank's sudden departure warrants scrutiny. Could there be more to this story than meets the eye? All right, bear with me. Let's go back just a little bit to the premiere of Deadpool and Wolverine on July 26th, a project where Reynolds enjoyed near total creative control. In that film, he introduced a character called Nicepool, which many interpreted as a satirical jab at Baldoni. Nicepool's man bun, performative feminist remarks, and ultimate demise at the hands of Ladypool, a character voiced by Lively, offered enough to raise eyebrows. And now that A-list cast was being fawned over at the premiere. As Lively and Reynolds commanded the red carpet with Jackman and their Deadpool and Wolverine team, the synergy between the two projects felt almost deliberate, leveraging the massive popularity of Deadpool franchise to boost anticipation for It Ends With Us seemed like a savvy marketing move. But it also raised questions about Baldoni's evolving or diminishing role in the project he once championed. Adding another wrinkle to the story is Baldoni's provisional writer, signed in January, which reportedly included clauses restricting his ability to respond to or engage with disputes related to the production. Though likely intended to foster collaboration, this agreement may now limit his capacity to address speculation, such as the alleged parody in Deadpool and Wolverine. Whether intentional or coincidental, the dynamics on display at the premiere suggested Baldoni had taken a more distant role. Could all of this simply be coincidence? Or does it hint at a deeper tension and shifting power dynamic within the industry? It's worth pondering. On the red carpet, Baldoni deflected with a pointed response when asked about the possibility of directing a sequel. Quote, "I think there are better people for that one. I think Blake Lively is ready to direct. That's what I think." While his tone might suggest nonchalance, the fallout was difficult to overlook. Baldoni, who had licensed the novel, directed the adaptation, and starred in the film, was accompanied by his wife, Emily Baldoni, yet walked the carpet seemingly without cast in sight. For someone so deeply invested in the project, it was a perplexing observation. What had once been a labor of love had seemingly been reduced to a footnote, leaving years of Baldoni's work overshadowed and his role diminished. Again, a stark contrast to the spotlight now squarely on others. To add another layer of contention, Lively and Baldoni viewed the film in separate theaters, believed to be, quote, the compromise referenced in an internal PR memo from Baldoni's camp. Baldoni attended with studio executives and select cast members in one venue, while Lively was joined by Reynolds, her friends, and family in another. The divide extended beyond logistics. During her speech at the premiere, Lively expressed gratitude to the fans and celebrated the creative team behind the film. However, her failure to acknowledge Baldoni stood out, particularly as she highlighted high-profile friends like Britney Spears, Taylor Swift, and Deadpool director Sean Levy. This omission again further underscored the growing chasm between the film's two central figures, both on and off screen. While Baldoni expressed gratitude, quote, I just want to say thank you to all the fans, to everybody. Thank you for seeing this movie, for supporting it, for supporting survivors, and for helping us make sure the message didn't get lost. I'm just so grateful. However, Baldoni again was notably absent from the film's UK premiere in London a few days later on August 9th. Lively and the rest of the cast were there, perhaps indicating another part of the, quote, compromise. But just when the narrative seemed to stabilize, a seismic shift occurred. A video resurfaced online, provocatively titled, quote, The Blake Lively Interviewed That Made Me Want to Quit My Job. In it, journalist Kirsty Flaw described her encounter with Lively as, quote, the most uncomfortable interview of my career, labeling the actress condescending and unprofessional. And this is where we'll pause for now. Later, we'll delve into the deeper currents beneath this moment, unraveling the motivations, strategies, and the lengths both sides may have gone to in their battle for control. Next time, as tensions boil over, Episode 3 unpacks how media narratives are weaponized, how Hollywood's power players manipulate public perception, and the ethical complexities of a PR war machine where winning the court of public opinion is just as crucial as the legal battles ahead. The battle for It Ends With Us takes a dramatic turn as PR strategy becomes the new battlefield. By mid-August of 2024, Stephanie Jones, head of JoanWorks PR, faces a scathing expose accusing her of toxic workplace practices, dragging her into the conflict between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni.